Okay, supposedly it's recording.
Great. So we just picked up our bees from Miller's Homestead here in the West Plains area. Bringing them home, I left them in the back of the truck, but we simply covered them with some towels, some old rags that we had to keep the wind off them as we were driving. It's also a good thing, you know, you basically keep them out of the weather. Now, some days or some years when we've had packages, in fact, the first year I did a package day, it was snowing. And it doesn't matter what the weather's like, the bees come on that day and you're basically on your own to do what you need to do. If it's cold and snowing on a day like that, the best thing to do is simply take your bees inside, leave them in your, in your house for a little bit and wait until the next day when it's better. But because we were doing a demo, we went and did it anyway. And all we really did that day was take the package and set it inside the hive body. Today's a nice day. It's in the mid to high 50s, no wind, which is kind of nice. So we're pretty much ready to go.
I just want to point out that the towels are a good idea if you're going to put your packages inside your car. There's always loose bees, and that'll help to keep them around the package instead of flying around your car.
See, they're Klingons. You can see the bees on the outside of the package, and that looks like almost like a drone, but it's not quite. You see a lot of different size bees in here. That's because the bees come from the almond orchards, and down there they simply get hives, take excess bees out of all the hives, put them all together, and then shake them into big netting areas, and then package about 3 pounds of bees for one box like this. This metal container here is the food for the bees during their transport from Southern California. This is actually the queen. She's hanging down here in her cage. Okay, so we just take these guys and walk them over to our hive. We got my marshmallows here.
You want to show them?
I got these from usually the guys that sell you the package. When you pick up your packages, they'll give you a few marshmallows. If not, you can always use the ones that you have at home. This hive, I was asked to set up a hive that's brand new. Now, normally you'd be painting your hive. I haven't had a chance to paint these yet or do anything to them. But, well, I have a bunch of hive bodies that I'll paint, and then I'll simply move the frames out of this one into a hive body. The other thing you should notice is that the bottom board, the screen bottom board, I put eye bolts on it because I don't usually open my hives very much. What I do is I simply have a scale and I weigh them. Weighing the hive tells you more than anything, because if they're putting on weight consistently over time, then you've got a really good, a good hive going. Okay, so first thing you want to do is make room. So I've taken one frame out. There's only 9 frames in here. That's because I have to put my feeder in eventually. What I like to do is move 2 frames over and take about 3 frames out. And this is all new equipment, so when we do the next one, you'll be able to see what happens with the bees. Next thing to do is to get the queen out. So to get the queen out, actually, I'm going to put my gloves on so I don't get stung. I don't like to get my fingers stung, and it's not likely you're going to get stung doing this, because these bees are all, they're not really defending anything yet. They've just gotten this new queen. They're bees that are all, not from the same hive. They're a little disoriented, and so they're not very aggressive in terms of trying to protect anything.
But there's always an outlier.
Yeah. There's almost always one bee in there that's really in a pissy mood. So you got to be careful.
And actually, I've gotten stung on package days by other stinging insects that are around and are agitated by the bees in the package. So like a stray yellow jacket or something.
So what you want to do is, you want to lift this food container up. There's going to be bees on the bottom of it. What you want to do is get this queen cage out as carefully as you can, like this. And then try not to kill bees. If at all possible, let it slide back in there.
And some people take the can out and they put a piece of cardboard or wood over the hole instead of putting the can back in like Kevin did.
Now you can see there's bees over the queen cage. Don't worry about that. Just brush them off. So you just want them off that queen cage so you can get at it a little better. Now, like I said last week, my recommendation, if you haven't done this before, is to take this inside to someplace where you're away from the bees, so that you have a little more controlled area of where you can do this.
You gotta slow down.
Oops. So you can see there's a cork in here. The queen is in there. She's got a nice, pretty blue spot on her. Not that I ever even looked for the queen, but so when she's in that cage, make sure you don't put your fingers on this side because she can sting through this. But what you're going to want to do is fish this out of here. Okay, get it close. And then when she's on the other side, walking the other way, simply pull this out and jam this marshmallow in. Okay, get out of here. Okay, just like that. Now this, you have to remember that this cage, the screened area, cannot be facing one of the frames. Okay, so you want to hang it in here at this orientation, not like this. If you hang it in at this orientation, the queen will starve to death because they have to be able to feed her. So you have to set it in this orientation, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to take this, set it down in here, push the frames together, and then rotate this and push it on.
Oh, okay.
Be able to see that the cage itself is locked in to that one, and there's access there for the bees to get in there and feed the queen. Okay, we put that back together. Now, to get this out again, you simply, hopefully just be able to pry this out a little bit. Okay, now here's the tricky part.
Wait a second, let me back up a little bit.
What you're going to do is just dump the bees into your box. You don't have to be gentle about it. In fact, you're not going to be. You get most of the bees out like this. Whack your box good. See how they all fall down there? And then dump them back in. Try and get all the bees out that you can. See, all down to that corner again. They tend to ball together. You do this a couple times, and essentially all your bees are gone. Okay, they're almost all out of there. They're all sitting right now down in the bottom of the hive. So the hive body. Now just take your frames, set your frames down in there gently, move these couple frames over very gently. Set your other frames in there. You can really hear them in there now. Your feeder. Set your feeder in. Take your food. See, these feeders have mesh nets in them so that the bees can't fall in there and drown. You'll still drown a few of them, but not usually. You don't drown too many in this configuration. You spill a little sugar water like this, it's not a big deal because they're going to suck it up anyway. Get it mostly full like that. Make sure it doesn't run over too much, and you're good to go. That's about all you need to do on this hive. Take your inner cover. Make sure you know where your notch is. You want to make sure your notch is in the front, not in the back, because when you come to work the hive next, you want the bees going out the front, not the back. where you're going to be working. Inner cover. Telescoping cover. Now you got several options here. You can, if you have a lot of bees on the outside of your hive like this, or you're worried about the ones in your box, you can leave it sit like this. Most of the time, this is what I do. I ignore it. Some people are really worried because a very small percentage of hives that you package, the bees are going to basically abscond. They're just going to leave. They're not going to like this hive, and they're going to want to leave. Now, the thing is with the queen in there, they're not going to leave until she leaves her cage, because they're still going to be, the pheromone that she's released, they're going to be impregnating on that, or imprinting on that pheromone scent. So what I do is to keep other nasties out, for example, yellow jackets or things like that. This is a hive restrictor, and it's got a large opening if you want a large opening, or a small opening, or you can block it off completely on this side. I like to go with the small opening because they can defend that really well. And so all you need to do with this is set it in place. Like that. Call it a day. You're done with this one. Now we can move to the next hive. The next hive we're going to do is a little different in that this is one of those hives I had from last year that I think I still have a marshmallow, but I'm going to take this one with me. This is one of the hives I had from last year. It still has about 80 pounds of honey in it. And since it's got 80 pounds of honey in it, there's really no reason to feed it. And in fact, I think personally honey is better than sugar water, probably. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do with that hive. So follow me. Now also I've kept these hives quite a bit of distance apart from each other.
They probably can't hear you.
I've kept these hives quite a bit of distance away because last year, obviously after a number of years, we lost all our hives. And I think it was because of a viral load. And so I want to try and keep the hives further apart so to minimize any drift there is between the different hives. Rock on top of the hive. It just keeps the
it's tied in.
Keeps the cover from blowing off in a high wind. Now this upper hive body is basically, I'll show you quickly, but it is pretty jam-packed with honey. So here's a frame. All capped honey. So this also is basically enough honey to keep these guys. Oops, go this way. Let them build off this side. So I always push all my frames to one side so that the bees continually build only on one side of my box. You know, there's this extra space here, and you know that if the bee space, right? If it's more than 3/8 of an inch, they'll fill it with comb. And you can see that this frame on the outside tends to get a lot fatter. But this entire upper hive body is full of honey, and it's heavier than heck. Now you also notice that I set my telescoping cover down like this. I always set it next to me so that when I set my hive body on it, if the queen happens to be in here, she doesn't fall through onto the ground. Okay, so that sucker's really heavy. Now down here, you can see there's actually some honey has dripped through here. I'm going to do exactly the same thing I did on the other hive, which is take out these inner 3 frames, about the inner 3 frames, if I can. There's also some honey on these. So for example, this frame is full of quite a bit of honey and some pollen. So she's got a good protein source. But then there's a frame like this that has some mold and stuff on it, a little bit of honey. They'll build this up and they'll start using this for brood comb.
And the thing that you want to make sure is that you don't want to put too much honey in the box.
Right.
Believe it or not, they need to have some place for the queen to lay eggs.
Right. So like this entire side is empty, and this is really, there's quite a bit of honey in there yet, but this is very much brood comb. So when you see honey on the corners like this inside, so the queen will lay eggs all in here, and then they use this food next to the brood to feed the brood. So most of these frames, I kind of set this one up so that they mostly have, you know, they're set up mostly for brood. Okay, so we're pretty set up there. We'll get ready to put our queen cell in there. See, here's a great frame. I just cleaned out a place where there were some dead bees. They'll come back in and fill this in with comb. Same on that side. You can see there's still some capped cells in there, but the bees will clean all that out for us. Since I have that nice little hole in there right there, that's where I'm going to put my queen cell. Now you also get a refund for these packages. So you want to try and be as gentle with your box as you can be, so that you can get them back and get your money back for the box. Come on, ladies.
Give me a second to get up, Kevin.
It's really nice when the weather's warm like this because you don't have to worry quite as much about doing it really fast.
It's nice that there isn't that much wind.
Yeah, it's nice that there's not much wind as well. Okay, there's my queen. My little pokey tool here. Just keep a good eye on her. Make sure she's not walking the direction when you of the hole when you open this up. No, the bees are simply going to eat that marshmallow out of there. So
I think that's one of the most difficult things when you're a beginning beekeeper, is to get that marshmallow in, because you're, you know, kind of worried about getting stung and the queen escaping and all that kind of stuff. So I think Kevin's idea of taking her in the bathroom is probably a pretty good one.
now you can see in there that the other side of where the queen is was honeycomb. You can see as I push this together to squish her in there, squish her frame in there, it kind of pushed some of that honey out. But that's okay, it'll drip down on there, and they'll feed her.
Okay.
Again, I want to mention again about the size of the gloves. That's a small glove. Do not get anything bigger than a small. Small and extra small are really good. My fingers are really tight in these, so I have nice control over what I need to do. I've seen people get, you know, really large gloves, and you know, even for a woman or even a guy getting large or extra large, they're just so floppy and big on the end, you can't control anything. You can see there's 3 little holes in there. That's how they fed the bees. Okay, and here we go again.
Wait, just 1 second.
You ready?
Yeah.
Again, we're back to maybe 50 bees left in there, which is nothing. Don't even worry about it. I just set them in front of the hive. Take my frame, set them back in here carefully. You want to be as careful as you can not to crush bees, not because I care about killing a bee, but mostly because I care about when you crush a bee, they release an attack pheromone that really agitates them, and you got a much higher likelihood of getting stung. So, and then once I got them in there, I simply move everything over, make it nice and tight on one side. That keeps everything nice and clean. This hive I'm not feeding, right? You saw the food that's in there. Plus this is about 70 pounds right there. It's heavier than heck. This is also going to create a honey block. So the queen will not come up in here because these frames are basically completely full of honey. She might move up in there, but if I see that, I'll move her back down in a brood. And with this much food in there at this time of year, with this package of bees, this hive should produce honey by the end of the year. We may have to split this in a month or so because this is a really strong hive. They don't have to draw any comb. You have to remember that for every pound of wax that they have to produce, it takes 6 pounds of honey. So that other hive is naked. They're going to have to build all their own comb in there. So that hive is going to lag this one tremendously. So we can see as we go forward in the summer how these two hives differ from each other. Inner cover goes on. Telescoping cover. Here's a hive restrictor that I made myself. See, I just cut out a section of it. Take it and gently slide it in. Oops. Here we go. And that's it for today. We're done.
Oops, I gotta get your face.
Very simple.